there, survivors, and welcome back to another build tutorial in ARK Survival Ascender. Today I'm going to show you how to build this Alpine Lodge step by step. So if you're looking for a new base, whether it's early game or mid game, this base offers a decent amount of space for all of your storage and crafting needs, a little dino parking to the side, but most importantly, very cozy vibes from a proper little cabin out there in the Alps. And the best thing is you don't need any mods to build this all. It's all using just vanilla structures. The only thing that I have used is the frontier skin from the Bob Talltales DLC, which I would definitely recommend, especially for the windows. If you really don't have it and you still want to build this, you would have to replace all the windows with greenhouse glass, which isn't the nicest, but it's the only other option you have if you don't want to use any skins. As always, if you like seeing these build tutorials and you want to see more, make sure to like the video, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and feel free to leave suggestions for future builds you'd like to see down in the comments below. And if you want to know where I built this, though, the original design that I built was located right over here on the map, so just in the snow border. Basically, it's a nice little place and it gives you the proper elf vibes. But if you want to know where I built the one that we are going to be building in the tutorial, it's very close to that spot. It's right near the green up, as you can see, and that is located right over here on the map. And as with most builds, we want to start out with our foundations. We actually want to start with a 6 by 6, so an easy square to get things started for the main build, actually the main house building. So that's going to be a 6 by 6, and we can also fill that in completely, of course, so not too big. Definitely easy to find a decent spot for this one. Let's say that this is the front of our building. It means that we'll go over to this side over here, bring it out by 1 and make it 2 wide in total, and then make this 5 long along the side, so just like this, and then we can fill that in completely. So that's going to be the side building, and then on the opposite side we're also going in by 1, and then we'll bring it out by 3 in total, and then make this 4 wide before bringing it back in, so that also leaves 1 over there, and of course we can fill in those sides too. So that's kind of the basic layout that we need, and it's pretty much all the space that we do need. We will, of course, have some stairs. So first of all, back here, we want to have a staircase if the landscape allows it. We also want to have a slope wall there. And to spice things up a little bit, we're actually going to have 2 thin beams along this side. We're going to have some railings just along that side. It's going to be a little porch here at the back, just already preparing that. Then over here on the front, we also want to make a staircase right over here. So 1 from that side. Again, if it allows you, you can add in the slope walls. Might not allow it because of the landscape. And then again, if it allows it, you can also have some railings along the side. Again, might depend on your landscape. If you do have access to commands, you can always do cheat ghost, so that you can ghost into the land if you really want to make sure that it looks the way you want to. But yeah, again, this is very much depending on your landscape. But yeah, that's what you want in the ideal state of building. And then over here on this side, we also want to add in some stairs at the end of this. And once again, if it allows us, we will be placing some slope walls along the side. And then if it allows you, you can also place down some pillars right next to it, just as some extra supports over there. And that is the foundation that we'll need for this build. Then we're going to work on the first layer. That's going to be using stone. We're going to start out with some pillars. 1 pillar right over here, another one on the opposite corner there, and then another one right in the middle of this section. So 3, then a pillar, then another 3. We want to do the same thing over here. So right in the middle, we want to have a pillar, and then a pillar on this corner here. The same thing over there on this corner. We're also going to add a pillar right here, which is going to be the corner of that building. We'll add 1 there because, once again, that's going to be a building. And then we'll have a pillar here and a pillar right over there. And of course, almost forgot, here at the back, we also want to make sure we add the pillar in the middle. And wherever it's visible, I always like to extend these pillars all the way into the ground. And now that we have kind of the basic shape down, we want to start adding in the doors. We of course want to have one here. I kind of just used normal doors, but you could also go for double doors if you like that more. We also want to have one right over here, and then actually the same one right over there on that side. We also will add one right there, which is going to access here the back porch. So that is going to be all the doors that we'll be adding. Then we want to have some windows, 2 right here on this side. Then we'll go all the way over here to the front. We'll have 2 of them right there, just like that. And then on the other side of the building, we want to add them right there in the middle, so that we have plenty of light coming in even to this first layer. Then we can take out our normal walls, start filling in the first layer here of the building. Here, important, we want to make sure that it is flipped this way so that the main room all faces the right way. I think that is a little bit more pleasing from the inside. And here we can kind of just follow this shape all the way along and around. So there we go. We'll have the main square, the little side building, and no stone walls on this side because that's going to be like a dino parking area. This of course means we can also start adding in some doors and windows. So yeah, we kind of want to just make sure that we add them in. You can kind of play with the orientation, whatever you prefer. I usually at least like to take a look at the way they open. So they open in a satisfying fashion, even though most of these windows are not really going to be opening anyway. But, it's always nice to know that if you would, they open in a satisfying pattern and not just very randomly. And then, of course, this door we want to add right over there as well. For those windows, actually, we want to take out our frontier skin, change to the glass structure, and actually change them to proper windows, because that looks a lot nicer and will actually let in some light to your build. One of the best additions they made with those Bob Tartales skins are these quite nice little windows. And then actually, interestingly enough, we're going to add another stone wall here, but we're going to flip this one around and we're going to add 4 more right in that spot. That's going to be part of the chimney that we'll be working on, but it's a little bit easier to get this in early. Then we want to take out a stone roof, and we actually want to make sure that it is flipped this way and place it all the way down here. So you can still kind of place some things below it, but we can also make the chimney happen right there. So we'll have some slope walls like that. Then, of course, bring up these walls a little bit higher like so. Also, of course, this one over here, bringing that all the way up before we make this go back into itself and adding the roof piece all the way at the top. But if you want to make this actually a functioning fireplace, what you will want to do is add a ceiling in here. Then, of course, take out a fireplace, place it right up here. Then we can place a roof again, so you'll not really see the fireplace. And now you can power it. The easiest way to do that would be with a pyro main. Otherwise, you would have to make some kind of accessible spot here to refill your fireplace all the time. But yeah, pyro mains are really good at powering your fireplaces. And at least now, you actually have the full chimney going up and the smoke will bellow forth from it. Okay, now it's time to get started here on this side building. First of all, we can add a layer of beams going across the entire top of these walls. You can also kind of just continue it like this if you want to. We are going to still change the actual fireplace, so for now we'll leave that open. We can then also take out our pillars right here along the corners and add a pillar to each of the corners. Then right here in the front, we want to start by 2 of these normal quarter walls. Same things here at the other side at the bottom. And then, of course, you want to use the alternate version for the top so that everything will fit nicely together and no gaps will be present. Then we can add in a window between. So we want to snap from these quarters, get the window right there in the middle, for both of these sides. And then of course we can add in the actual windows themselves and skin them to the Frontier skins, of course, because that looks a whole lot nicer. Then here on the side, we also want to make sure to add in these two windows and then fill in the middle of the walls just normally. And then of course this layer, we also want to add in the windows and change them to the Frontier skins for the better looks. So that is the start of all of this. And then of course it's time to build the roof on top. So we want to snap this shallow slope wall right up there. And then we also want to add them along the side here to get the shape of the building in. Here on the other side, we're going to do the same thing to start with, adding these shallow walls. Of course, we don't have to add anything on that side, but we do want to have one here on this side to get the shape of the building in a little bit more complete. Then we want to take out our ramps. We can start adding them just along the side like this and making sure that we have the overhang by one on the front. We can actually continue this all the way over here on the other side as well. Of course, we don't have to go too far here because the rest of the building will be there. Here we can also just fill in the entirety of this roof. And then here on the other side, again, want to pay attention to the shape of the building that's going to be here. So only fill in those and then only fill in this front section. And then actually over here, we want to add in a ramp corner just to get a little bit more shape and leave a bit more space for the building that we will be making very shortly. And then of course over here, we actually just want to fill in a normal wall because otherwise there's going to be a gap and we definitely don't want a gap there. And then we also want to take out our beams again and have a beam going across the top of this little roof here at the side. We're almost there, but we still want to add a few more details, namely some slope walls. We want to first start out by adding some here underneath as some supports for the building. Just looks a little bit nicer that way. And then we can actually add these in all the way along the sides here as well. So yeah, we want to make sure that all these supports are in. And then of course here on this side, we also want to do these two. We don't have to do the third because again, there's going to be a whole building there. So we don't want to interfere with that. But yeah, this is how this little side addition looks. Quite simple, but a really nice Alpine look to it. And then for the next spot, we want to start here at the front. We're actually going to add in a balcony. So over here, we're going to add a layer of ceilings all the way from one side to the other. And underneath, we actually want to add more of these shallow slope walls as supports, just to keep that consistent look going and all the way to the end. So yeah, that is adding in some nice supports. Then we can take out our railings, add them along the side here. There we go. And of course, we can also add in some half pillars. So at least one here at the end, but I probably would do after every two ceilings just to get a little bit more detail in that railing right away. Then the next is time to add some more structure to the whole build. So we want to start here on this corner, add in two pillars. Same thing over here. We can actually continue that in the middle and on the other corner here as well. And then over here, the same thing again. We want to raise this one up by two more, but then the wooden pillars this time, of course. And then here in the middle, you can also make sure that that one is too high in total. So that really already gets a little bit more of the structure together. Then we want to take out our beams and actually continue this along the sides of the building to once again get that structure going a little bit more. Here on the front, however, we are going to leave the middle two open because instead we're going to use some half beams there for the entrance that is going to be right there in the middle. So speaking of this front, we want to start with the normal quarter walls here, and we want to go all the way until the end of these beams we've just placed down. So all the way across to the other side. Then we want to switch to the alternative version, and we want to add two of them right there and one of them right there in the corner. Same thing over here, two of them here, one of them in the corner, And then actually along the top, we can also bring this across up to that point. Same thing here over on the other side. So we just want to bring this all the way across. Then once again, going back to the normal variant of the quarter wall to fill in these. Fill in that one at the side as well. Same thing on the other side. It might look very confusing, but this is all to make sure there's not going to be any unwanted holes there. So we want to have a full wall right over there. Also a full wall in these gaps that we've just created. Now these we're actually going to change into the frontier windows, which already look quite nice. And then of course we want to take out our door shape and snap it right there in the middle, adding our door itself too, so that we have the entrance to the balcony here. And then if you want to add a little bit more details, what you could do is take out some little thatch ceilings, add 2 of them here, quarter ceilings of course, just to create a little flower bed. We can flip around some wooden quarter walls to kind of create the sides of this all, and we can then do the same thing here over on the other side. And then if you paint the thatch in either green or the filth color, it will look like very nice grass, and you can plant some plants on it with the shovel and the plant pot from Bob Telltale's DLC to bring some more life to your build. Over here we want to make sure that we have a beam going across the bottom, and then we want to use the thin pillars along the sides to make sure that there's no gaps around the window anymore. So that's what we're going to do here for the front. And for this right side here, this is actually the easiest one because we can just fill in the entire wall with our wooden walls from one side to the other, because we're going to have the addition built against that wall. Then over here on this side, it's also relatively simple for the first half, because that is also just a normal wall. And to make this look a little bit nicer with the chimney in the middle, we probably want to add some extra pillars along the side of it, just like that. And then over here on this side, this is where it is going to be slightly different. The first 2 side walls we can just fill in as normal. Then we can bring out our normal quarter walls here at the bottom, and the alternative version, so they fit nicely together, at the top again. Then fill in a normal wall in the middle, which we can turn into another window. We want to do the same thing, so some thin pillars along the side, a nice beam at the bottom, and if you want to, also here we can add in some flower beds. So again, using some quarter thatch ceilings just to create a little flower bed. And then underneath, actually, we want to bring out our wooden ramps just like this, because that already looks quite nice. And then what you want to do along the sides is add in these half thin beams, and then we can have a thin beam at the front as well, just creating that nice little flower bed as a little additional detail for these walls. We also want to bring out our wooden beams again and bring them along the top side over here. The same thing here along the front, actually. We want to make sure that we bring them all the way across, just like that. And we'll continue that over here. We'll leave the chimney open there. And then here we just want to leave this middle one open, because you want to use 2 quarters right there, or half ones right there, and then have a beam sticking out there as well. We should be able to do that in the middle of all of these windows, just like this. That's where we take out our quarter ramps again, and we'll add 2 right here and 2 right over there, just to add a little bit more details for these windows that we've created, and also just to help make all of these walls less flat. I think that's always a nice thing to do. So the same over here. We'll bring those around just like that. And then the final side here at the back, we want to start by adding in these walls along the side, just like this. Then we can have the alternative variant along the top so that it fits in nicely. The normal variant of quarter walls at the bottom again, and then filling in the gaps with a nice window with the frontier skin. Then we want to take out our thin pillars along the sides of these to hide the gaps, have a beam across the bottom, and again, as an additional little detail, we can have some thatch quarter ceilings to create some flower beds. Underneath, then we want to have some little ramps as supports. And then with our beams, we want to make sure that we get some of these thin half ones along the side first before we can add in the thin beams along the front of it as well. We're not going to do the little roof because there's going to be a balcony right above this, so we'll wait for that. And that means that this layer is pretty much complete. We'll also wait with the beams because again, there's going to be balcony, so we want to keep an entrance clear. But for now, we're going to focus on getting the staircases in, so it's a little bit easier to move around the entire build. So we want to take out those stairs, and if this is the front of your building with the balcony, we want to go all the way here to the back and place the stairs right over there. We also want to take out our pillars, and 2 from all of the sides. We want to place one there, we want to place one here, and then the same right over there as well, just to create the illusion that it is supporting the rest of the building. We can then take out our wooden ceilings and start filling in the whole build. So we have a first layer, that's the basement, that is actually quite low because it's really just a little basement. I tried to keep this base relatively compact. So yeah, we can just fill in this entire floor, which will create, basically the main living quarters. We're gonna, of course, add a little wooden railing along the side of this, and then also have some right over there. We can then actually start to create some dividing walls. First of all, we want to create some walls going in like this, so 3 wide. And then have another wall right over here, and then leave this open to create a nice doorway. You can either go for the double doorway or a normal doorway, but since it's inside and since I'm probably going to keep this open, I chose to do a double doorway here. Then we can have a pillar right here in the middle. For now, just too high. We'll raise it as we build up to the other layers, but this also already divides this into some different rooms, which means we can also focus on the actual fireplace because we've made it look nice from the outside, but you of course also want to be able to use it here from the inside. So what you want to do is take away this wall for now. We can actually continue this ceiling a little bit. Then we want to take out our fireplace. What you want to do is you want to place it in such a way where it kind of overlaps a little bit with the walls, but not too much, because you don't want to have too much of the smoke coming into the building, mostly staying inside of this shape. Then what we want to do is create the small short doorway so that it fits in nicely and you don't really notice it. And then you have your little fireplace on the inside as well as the smokestack on the outside, which is quite nice. Then all you need to do is, probably use a power main to power it. That's the easiest way. And then we, of course, also need a staircase to go up to the next layer. So once again, we want to take out our stairs here and raise them up by 2 in total, because that's going to be to the next level here. And then we can have some railings, of course, along the sides as well as along those sides, because that's where the next layer is going to start. And whilst working here on the inside, we can actually raise this up by 2.5 more. So that's how high that is going to be. Then this wall is just going to be a full wall for most of it, except that one right there. So we can fill in all of this. And of course, on top of this, it means we need some quarter walls instead to fill in that gap. We can have a normal doorway here, just to create an access point to the walkways that we're going to work on. So yeah, we want to take out our ceilings again. We want to make sure that we have 4 of them right over here, so it goes past this wall actually. And we also want to make sure that that goes all the way back here, and then have another walkway on this side, and that's how we will reach the balcony. So we'll kind of have an inner balcony here as well, but it will also connect to a balcony here on the outside. So we can actually continue this being 4 wide on the outside as a nice little balcony. We want to make sure that we add in some support. So once again, the shallow slope walls are really good for just such a thing. So we want to add them alongside. That's why there's no roofs above those windows we created. And then of course we can have a nice railing along the side of this balcony. Then we can also bring out our little thin half pillars, add them just on the corners and in the middle to create a little bit more detail here. We can actually also, of course, create our door to get in and out of the building and onto the balcony. And then over here, we can have a nice window. And then for the rest of this layer, we can just fill in the walls like normal. We, of course, want to fill in the windows and the doors as well so that we have them. And the window, of course, we want to skin with the frontier glass so that it looks even nicer. Now we can actually take out our pillars. We want to at least have them here on the corners. And we can, of course, now add in the beams, but we want to keep the space open where we have the door, but the rest of it can have the beam going across this side. So that finishes up the outside wall for the balcony at least. And then here on the inside, we want to go back to this walkway here. We want to add in some railings along that side. And then if you really want to, you can of course also add in a door over here. Although you probably want to keep that open since it's an internal door. And it's going to be annoying to have to open and close it all the time. Over here, we want to have a wall along these sides because this is going to be a bedroom, so we will have some more ceilings filling in this part of the building. We actually will have some walls going up too high right over there, and we will have some walls right over here as well. These walls are going to be slightly different because the shape of the roof is going to come into play, but we can at least add in the door itself to the bedroom so that you have nice cozy bedroom here and access to all of your balconies. Then we want to take out our pillars again. We want to add one right there in the corner, one right here on the corner. Then we can have one over here and one over there. And we'll have the same thing over here. So one over here and one over there to get started on this next layer. Looks a little bit confusing, but at least we have most of this interior now in place. We want to add a few more things. First of all, we want to make sure that we add a pillar right there in that corner too. We also want to make sure that we have a beam going across from one side to the other here, just as some extra supports. And speaking of supports, we can also use some of the scaffolding. So what you want to do is have one over here, have one on that side, and then if you want to, you can add another one right there just to have a little bit more support going on here on the inside of the building. Then for these walls on the side, we at least want to add a little window over here. And we can do the same thing over there and over there just to add in a little bit of light. Add in some normal walls along the sides for the rest of this. Just like that. And of course, adding in the actual windows. And changing them to the frontier glass ones so that we actually get some light in here. And then it's time to focus on this wall here in the front and the shape of the building in general. So we're going to have two walls on both of those sides. And then here in the middle, we want to bring out all quarter walls all the way across, just like this. And we'll have some walls on top of that, which we're going to turn into a nice window so that we get a nice view in our bedroom. We have some light coming in. We can have some beams going across the bottom there. And then, of course, some thin pillars along the side there just to finish that little window there. We can, of course, also add in a little flower bed. So some quarter thatch ceilings with some ramps underneath as supports just to get that look completed. And, of course, that means we want the thin half beams along the side and then the full thin beams along the front here, just as an additional little detail. And then the next step is basically starting to shape up the rest of the building. So first off, we want to have our normal quarter walls alongside of these. Then we want to have the same variance along the top of this as well. Then we can take out our shallow sloped walls again. We want to end right here with one, and then we should just be able to fill in the shape of the building going all the way up and all the way back down along the other side, and that is the shape we want, the similar shape as the rest of the roofs we created so far. And that means we can also take out our ramps again. We can start right over here, make the overhang by 1 here on the outside on the front, and we want to bring that all the way up, and of course along the front all the way back down again over here. That already looks pretty nice, but of course we also want to add in some supports. So first off, over here on this side, we want to add those supports in, and then along the other side as well, just like this. And if you want to add a little bit more detail, you can have a trophy wall mount right above the door. Get a nice skull on that, just to have a little bit more details and really finalize this front wall. You can see the chimney fits nicely in between all the roof sections. We can continue the ramps over here on this side. And of course, it basically will go back up over here on that side. It should meet up with the wall that we created on the inside already, which now means we can start filling in this wall over here. We can start by adding in some full walls right there. We can have some quarter walls along the side. And then we should already be able to fill in the rest with our shallow sloped walls all the way to the top. Unfortunately, there's no really good way to fill this in unless you're going to use a bunch of quarter walls. So we kind of just have to live with it. Of course, an additional way to fix that would be adding in some additional pillars. So if you really want to get rid of that, you could have some pillars over here so you don't see those little gaps. On this wall as well, it could be nice to add in a trophy wall mount just to fill up that big wall that is quite empty otherwise. And then of course on this side we can also bring down the ramps all the way again, just like that. And that means we can also add in the supports over on this side, just going up with these shallow walls, shallow slope walls on both sides, just to add in a little bit more of these details. And of course here we want to have this one as well, and we can then have this filled in along the side, unless where we have of course the chimney itself, so that we have some decent supports along those sides as well, making it look as quite a nice building. Then for the one side over here, we can just start filling in the entirety of the roof like normal. So we just want to go from one side to the other and fill it all in completely. We can take out our beam, make sure that we have a nice beam going across the roof from one side to the other, just like that, to create a nice little ridge on the top. But over on this side, there's going to be a slight addition to the roof. So we kind of want to raise these up a little bit further. We can have this first layer going all the way across with the ramps like that. And that means we can also add in these supports all the way through along the entire side of the building. There we go. And up here, it means we're going to create a little addition. And it's actually quite simple. We want to start by having some quarter walls along the side here, having a full wall in the middle that will transform into a window, which means we can have the thin pillars along the side as well as the beam across the bottom here. We can take out our shallow slope walls, have them meet up here in the middle, and also extend to the sides over here. Then we want to take out our ramps again. First of all, we want to fill in these ramps all the way along the side like normal. Then here on the inside, we can actually start filling in the shape a little bit. So we have a shallow slope wall there. We have one right over here and two up there to fill in the rest of that shape, which means we can have some quarter walls in there to finish that shape completely, basically. And it means here on the outside, we also want to have a shallow slope wall, but this time we want to turn it the other way around, of course, to get the right look in there. Then basically we can continue this roof all the way up to the top over here. So we want to make sure that those ramps go all the way to the top of the roof. Up here, however, there's going to be a difference, of course. We're going to have the ramp corners all the way to make a nice turn in the roof. We can bring out the ramps over here then, all the way here until the front in this shape. Same thing over on the other side, filling in all of this the same way. And then, of course, we can bring out the ramp corners again. We just have to press one there and place one here, and then it will already fit in with the rest of the roof. We, of course, also want to make sure that we have these beams going across the top of the roof. And that is how we create a nice little addition here. We do want to go here on the inside because it's not completely filled in yet. We want to place some quarter walls on top of these slope walls we just placed. And we want to make sure that we place in the final slope walls there to finish the rest of the shape. These will have a contrast with the walls that we placed on the inside and the outside, but that is totally fine. It just means that we filled in all of the remaining gaps that we might have had. Technically, if you really wanted to, you could add some supports here, but seeing as it's so close to the roof, it's not really necessary. You might as well save the extra structures. But yeah, you do get a really nice looking roof this way. So we have the chimney on the one side and the additional roof there on the other side. And for the rest of it, we get a really nice detailed building with a nice interior already, laid out for you, with the stairs, with the bedroom, etc. All nicely connected now. With the walkways, everything should be completely closed off. It's not completely done, however. What we want to do now is add some support beams. So basically get these shallow walls in here, just like that. The same thing right over here, just like so. And then, of course, for the other side, we're going to do the same thing. They will go a little bit further here, of course, but it's the same principle, and we'll bring these all the way across just as a little bit of extra detail here on the inside. I always quite like that, and it also helps shape up the building, so it's definitely a nice thing to have on the inside. If you want to, you could add them here on this side as well, but because we already have this window, you could also leave them out to not make it too cramped and too crowded. Whatever you prefer. But yeah, that is how we do the main section of the building, but we still, of course, have the side building to add. And it's quite simple. First thing we want to do is have some beams going across the sides from the main building all the way to the end of this. And this is also where we have some pillars going up, just like so. And then a half pillar on top of these, just to raise this up slightly higher. Now that we've placed all that down, it's very simple. We want to start with some railings almost all the way to the top here. And this is how we're going to fill in the side of this, basically the little shed at the side of the building. So we'll do that for all of these, creating our walls that way. And that's just the start, of course, because we also want to shape up this roof a little bit. You should be able to snap them here to the top of the pillars. If not, temporary wall can always help you out. But we then want to shape up this building just like so. So 3 ramps going up and then 3 ramps going back down on the other side. If I don't misplace all of them, that would be nice. And then we can, of course, just bring this into the building like that. That's why we had no walls here, because we're going to have this roof which fills up most of this wall. So we can just kind of fill this all in, get this building going, of course, take out the beam across the top again. This is not all though. We want to add a few more details in, of course. First of all, we want to add some supports here along the outside, just like that. Same thing over here on this side, adding them all in. And then we want to make sure that we get some supports going across this build. So we want to just add those in, and I mean, it's optional, it's whatever you prefer, but you could add these in for each of these pillars if you really want to make this feel a little bit more detailed. But if you want to save on the structures, of course, this is something you could easily leave out of it. But yeah, that does add a nice bit of extra detail for the little shed on the side, which is where you could park some dames. Just make sure that you know, you have some safety measures in place if you're building in a dangerous area, because of course things can just still run into this little shed area on the side. But that does complete the build and gets you a very nice and cozy Alpine Lodge. The only thing that I would maybe change, or what I changed for my design, is all the ramps on the roof. I changed into the Frontier skin, as well as these big beams at the bottom of the windows. That's all I pretty much changed. So all the roofs and the beams across the bottom of the windows. And once all that is done, you should end up with something similar to this, which is a very nice and cozy Alpine Lodge without needing any mods to build it yourself. As I said, for the plants, if you want to do it without mods, you could use the shovel and the plant pots from the Bob Talltails DLC. Otherwise, you can of course also use custom cosmetics or mods. I usually use JV8's landscaping for adding these plants in. As you can see, we have the Alpha Rex trophy. We have some details on the balcony as well to make it a little bit more cozy. We have the little shed here to the side, and then of course the rest here as well, nicely decorated to make a really nice cozy Alpine Lodge. It's a small to medium-sized base, so it will last you for the earlier phases of the game, but it could last you way longer, of course, if you just start building other things around it whenever you need more space for some of the bigger things. But yeah, it does have a very nice and cozy aesthetic on the inside. Yeah, we can go in here. We have a little storage shed, basically, with some forges, using the Astraeus cosmetics, by the way, for a lot of these crafting stations. Just to get a little bit of a cooler look. But yeah, we have a little bit of storage here in the side shed. We have more storage, as well as a generator, the cam bench, the fabricator, and yeah, more storage in general, as I said. And then of course here on the other side, this is where you could park your tames, your dinos. And then we have the access up into the main part of the base. Some more decorations. Also use some of the Viking Builders cosmetic, as well as the Eastern skin. This flower vase you could unlock during the Easter event. We have a very nice and cozy interior. The power main, of course, to power the fireplace to keep things cozy. Very nice little cozy area over here. You can see how nice this is by having this open space above. Feels a little bit bigger that way. Nice access as well to the balcony, which is always good, of course, keeping things safe. We have a very nice and cozy kitchen, mostly using the Astraeus skins for the utilities and the Viking Builder skins here for the table. And then these chairs are just from the Bob Talltails DLC. Quite nice and cozy, if you ask me. And then of course we can also take our stairs up to the next layer. We'll have a very nice cozy little bedroom over here with you know, some necessities, and just making sure it is very nice in here. We have the extra light, of course, coming in from all these windows. Some libraries with the I believe this is the Viking skin. And of course the walkway over to the other balcony over at this side as well, which is also fully decorated. So yeah, there we go. That is how you build this Alpine Lodge, which might serve you well on your next ARK adventure. If you enjoyed this build tutorial, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and of course feel free to leave your suggestions for future builds you would like to see down in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Goodbye.